This is a Film Stories original podcast.
And so, we began. Ad Astra per Aspera. Through struggle. The stars.
Welcome back to We Are Starfleet, where we are covering the latest Starfleet Academy. We Are Starfleet is a part of the Film Stories Podcast Network. Follow us at Starfleet Pod on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads, or check out our website at www.wearestarfleetpod.com for more about the show, your hosts, and episode links. So for today, we're talking about the 8th episode of Starfleet Academy, The Life of the Stars, an episode that is structured in such a way that it cleverly mirrors a stage play based on our town. I'm your host, Mike Slamer, and visiting with me today from the War College to discuss this episode is Chancellor Kurt North. Kurt, hey man, it's been a long time since you've been on this podcast, and I want to say thank you for returning.
It's been a long time since I've been on any Star Trek podcast. I stopped on Make It So a while back as well. So yeah, it's great to be talking Trek again. Heck
yeah, that's Make It So, a Star Trek Legacy podcast, still on the Film Stories Podcasting Network. Kurt, tell us, how have you been enjoying this show so far?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed Starfleet Academy. I would say that similar to Strange New Worlds, I don't think it has exceptional high highs and really low lows. It's kind of quite compressed. The first episode was really good, and it kind of set the stall out quite well. And what I'm enjoying with it, and I will proviso this, that I have actually seen the next two episodes as well. So I have seen the full season in completion. I really enjoyed the journey that they're on and the way that it's kind of like going back to the Star Trek Picard days where they really struggled with the idea of a 10 episode story as such. I think that Starfleet Academy has just about got the right balance of kind of weekly episodes with maybe like your prankster episode, but also interspersing it with a larger story at play. And I'm a big world builder fan, so the fact that it's got that element to it as well works really well. So yes, I've really enjoyed it. I thought there's been some really great episodes. Some episodes I've not really clicked with as such, but generally as a whole, it's been a wonderful show.
Wow, yeah. Out of curiosity, how do you feel Starfleet Academy stacks up to any other of the franchise shows in terms of introducing new viewers?
Introducing new viewers. I mean, you've got to look at, say, Prodigy as the obvious one that you could link it to. I think it does an interesting thing in that it doesn't really over-explain. So things like the burn, I was a big fan of the idea of the burn and the 10C and Discovery as concepts, again going back to the world building. It doesn't really hedge too much on that, and I think it does enough to get people involved. There's plenty of this nostalgia in there, like the Dax episode, for example. So yeah, I think there might be a little bit of a barrier. It's difficult because obviously we're in that world and we've been watching it for so many years that to put yourself into a new person's perspective, that's difficult. But I do feel that there's enough there, and it's unique enough that you can grasp onto certain elements of the show without really having to do too much legwork.
Yeah. I love that take. So we're here to talk about The Life of the Stars, the 8th episode. How do you feel this episode stacks up to what came before it?
I think this is potentially, without going into any of the future ones, is the best episode that they've had. I absolutely love this episode.
Wow.
I think for me, what I like a lot in my Star Treks is the trauma response and stuff like that. So things like your family or Memento Mori in Strange New Worlds. I know this is a kind of an argumentative point in Hide and Seek. I think Hide and Seek is a wonderful episode. It's one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek Picard, and of Star Trek in total. And I know that's a hot take, but I do like stories where they look at things like PTSD, trauma, and obviously the other one from the name escapes me now, from the Doctor's perspective on Strange New Worlds as well. The war one, I thought that was really good as well. So what I particularly like about this episode is the use of the play, the use of the theatre stuff. I think that they've done lots of Shakespeare with Picard.
Yeah.
That, you've got what's past his prologue in Discovery, where they've kind of played around with the thing with the Kings as well in Discovery. You've obviously got Star Trek TOS stuff that have had some theatrical stuff in. They've even used it in Lower Decks. And I think this is a really unique way, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but some of the kind of connections that they've made with the actual theatre production, I think works really, really effectively. And I think overall, especially linking it with a bit of nostalgia in there with the Doctor, and a bit of Voyager kind of look back as well. I think it works really effectively well.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. High marks. Yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a super dense, super packed with a lot of information, and a lot of context. And yeah, it's very meta, isn't it? With the whole the stage play structure, you called it too, with Shakespeare and and Picard. I immediately thought about the episode where he's trying to win over Loaxana from the Ferengi captain, and he goes into the big Shakespeare monologue. So good, so good. How do I compare thee to a summer's day? So good. I love this sort of structure build, and that they mirror other media formats. Strange New Worlds has done it before, where they mirrored the sci-fi, right, the science fiction of the 60s, and made a real solid meta commentary. I think it's interesting that writers are taking this sort of approach to structuring their seasons now in episodic sort of ways. Just like Cozine, which came before, I feel this could be easily a bottle episode.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this is the thing, like you're talking about bottle episodes and the structure of the show and things. What I really liked about Picard, and what I thought was a missed opportunity, and the same with Discovery, is when they've got these fantastic ideas that they don't really utilize it as much. And I think Academy has been the closest that will potentially do that. So the Romulan relocation, that to me, I mean, I know I've said it on Make It So many a time, but I do feel that could have been in a different world. It could have been more of a HBO show, multiple episodes of a full story behind that and how the relocation of the Romulans. I'm not sure that would actually work, but I do feel that would be a really interesting Star Trek for me. Having the burn, having 10C, all of this stuff that's come before it, I think works really well. But then having Academy as like a reflection on, like the episode with the Betazoids and the debate and things like that they can have these micro discussions about it and stuff. I think really works to its great effect. And I think that even though we don't get as much, but something like the Klingon storyline that we've just had with Jaden and his history and the way that we resolved that, again, that could have been quite a elongated show in its own right. And that's what I really like about that element, that we've got this world building, and this episode, especially with the Miyazaki incident, is a continuation, and I like that side of it as well. Like I mentioned family before, which is a perfect example of that. So it for that really kind of gets my gears going, and I think it does a good job here.
Yeah, agreed. Let's get into it, because this is, like I said, it's dense. There's a lot to unpack. This episode opens with the Doctor giving a log entry, which I love. Who doesn't love a log entry opening? And there was a quote that I took away from it, where the Doctor says, "Time is their beast," meaning the organics, right? "Time is my beast, and it bites us differently." And understanding that opening line with the context of the episode, we open in darkness and we end in darkness. I thought that was a beautiful bookend here. The Doctor, this entire season, has been alluding to some sort of emotional trauma that he himself has experienced. And we finally learn what that experience is in this episode. So what were your thoughts on the opening? You know, we come back, the Miyazaki incident has happened, the cadets are all in a state of different levels of trauma and PTSD. The counseling has been ongoing, but it hasn't been effective. And thus our story begins.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So, like you said, with it's such a dense episode, and there's so much to like read into it and things. Because one of the things that I noted, and I had to do a little bit of research on the 2003 Broadway stage play of this actual thing, which is available on YouTube. I'd suggest people go and see that. Is that it's almost like for me that the Doctor is the omniscient like stage person, but then eventually interacts and actually becomes part of the story, whereas the stage director, or the stage manager, sorry, is someone who is just there observing, talking about the human condition, all of that side of things. But the Doctor is actually the one who is detached, is almost omnipresent, but then you put it perfectly right there with like the time is their beast, time is my beast. It bites us differently. It's just the way that he actually then instills himself into the story, and I think that that's a really interesting take. And it comes at the beginning of the episode, and you're not quite sure what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I've watched this twice, and it's about an hour and 3 minutes long, and it does feel like quite a long episode. But I would normally say that's what's the best way of putting it? I would normally give that as a criticism, but it feels like it's so much wealth in there that it doesn't, even though it is slow moving, it feels like there's enough depth in there. Yeah. And I think that it takes its time to get to the point of why the Doctor's like that. And it feels like the payoff is well into the future randomly, but it works just brilliantly. And emotionally, it works as well. So I think, the just using that stage manager presence, and I know it will jump between different people, but I think for the Doctor, it definitely has that impetus.
Yeah, great call out. He is the stage manager, and I love the context of how we bring in the play in and of itself. So let's talk about that. These students are back at the academy, classes are underway, counseling is not going well. So they bring in none other than Lieutenant Sylvia Tilly to help round out their courses. And it's theater. Kurt, I was not expecting that.
No. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Tilly's been one of those people who we know that she was going to turn up at some point in this show, because, you know, you would expect maybe she's going to be a big part of it. And as far as we know so far, she's only in one episode. So we don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes, whether or not she turns up or not. But placing her in the 3rd year of students as well, and, you know, the rumours being that this was the idea for this was going to be a 4-year show to go through their particular years at the academy, to think, well, maybe she would, if it goes well, be a major character in the 3rd year. That might be what they may be looking at or alluding to there. To bring her back in as obviously a Lieutenant Tilly, and to have her mellowed out, I would say. I think the way that her general demeanor is a little bit more like that. She's definitely more experienced. You know, we've had those episodes in Discovery where she's, you know, she has found her calling in this world, but she does feel more at home here, and theatre being the one is an interesting take, which again, like you say, I didn't see coming. Yeah. So I thought it was really nice.
Yeah, it's the introduction to her character coming in and getting to know how these cadets are just like, what? Like, what do you mean theater? What? This makes no sense. This is stupid. This is silly. We ain't got time for this. And there's Sam sitting there, eyes wide as heck, locked in. Love that. That was so much fun. And Tilly says, hey, listen, Theater is statecraft. You have to know how to work in diplomacy, work with other people. What better way to experience getting into someone else's shoes? And I love this idea.
Yeah, but I think it also works as well because they are the way that Tilly brings them out is expert. I think
Yes.
just because of the way that they're not wanting to talk, and all the characters at certain points are in different stages of when they want to talk and when they don't want to talk. You've got so many different balances within this. I mean, you look at Sam exuberant as always, and that's something that I'm sure we'll talk about by the end of this one. But she's so exuberant and so willing to like sort of be the teacher's pet, and Tilly calls out on it, which is a great moment.
Favorite.
Favorite. That's it. And then she recalls that again later on
Yeah.
when she's actually in the quarters as such. But the fact that she's able to call on that, Jaden gets his excuse at certain points. You've got Caleb being a little bit melancholy, but is open to it, and then you've obviously got other characters that are really, really, really resistant to it, and and there's a lot of going on. And what I liked about this particular episode as well, and I mentioned this a few times recently for different things, is the face acting. I think the face acting says 1,000 words,
Yeah.
and I think that they've got it down. I think the character, the person who plays Caleb especially, has got a really, really good range on him. I think he can portray so much with just his facial expressions, and that whole situation with Tareen is brilliant. I think that they both play off each other so well.
They really do.
And some of it is unspoken.
Yeah, the chemistry is pretty off the charts.
Yeah.
And how the writers are pairing their stories together and really putting, it's low stakes world wise, right? But it's high stakes emotionally wise. These characters have experienced something terrible. One of their classmates was brutally murdered in front of them, and Tarima herself is dealing with a lot of her own issues, which we'll get into in a little bit. So to bring them back at this point in their academic journeys, in their journeys as cadets, learning how to exist in the Starfleet paradigm, I think is super interesting to explore. And Caleb,
and for Tilly to pull that in and out, like
Yeah.
the original question, that's what she's doing throughout the episode.
Yeah. And to your point, Caleb is open to it, right? He's talking with Tarima at one point, and he says, "Hey, the academy is not that bad. You're talking to someone who did not want to be here, but here I am." And I think that says a lot about their states of mind at this point in time.
Yeah, definitely. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, Tilly is perfect. Her character arc through Discovery starts with her being fresh out of the academy, nervous as all get out, to, absolute confident Starfleet Academy instructor.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, she's such a rounded character now. She's so serene but assertive. She feels like when she's pulling information off people, or she's saying, "Well, why is that?" and asking the open questions, and really kind of giving that instill. I think that the thing for me that's really interesting, and obviously being from the UK, is that the prank episode for me was one of those things where I'm a little bit on the outside feeling, oh, that's maybe a little bit too American for my liking, and it wasn't exactly. I quite enjoyed the episode, but it did take me out a little bit.
Sure.
But this felt, I mean, maybe it's more the thespian stuff, I don't know. But this felt more akin to something that I could imagine people having a debate about and talking about and feeling. It felt more natural to me than the prank episode. That's kind of the juxtaposition that I was looking at, really.
Sure.
And I just love that debate, that kind of lecture theatre style, but really, it's also not done in a way where it's like it's lectured. It's done in a debate, and also the way that they're all lined up on different seats and different levels, and it feels more open and honest. And I think that is part of the good direction on it as well, because of the way Tilly can actually operate between different people at different times, which works really well.
Yes. It's almost as if they planned where to sit.
Yeah. Maybe there's some blocking going on
Could
there,
be.
potentially.
Could be. There's a great scene with Tilly, Captain Aki, and Jet Reno in Aki's quarters where they all come together, they share a drink, and, Tilly addresses the fact that, hey, we are literally a couple of ladies at a time. And of course, Aki being Lanthanite, she's practically immortal. I'm still unclear as to the longevity of their livelihoods. But that scene it felt like a gift to Discovery fans, if you will.
Yeah, it felt like a little bit of a homecoming, didn't
Yeah.
it, with Reno and Tilly, and like you say with the Leffanite as well. I think is she half Leffanite? I think.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
that was mentioned.
yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's so interesting. We'll maybe talk about Ake more when we get to the Doctor scenes as well in relation to that. But the coming together of those two, but even with including her, because of her longevity, we know that she's actually been in the world for that long as well, that she remembers that time. Even that had a little bit of credence to it and a little bit of weight to it. So the fact that they're kind of having this, for all intents purposes, log fire discussion and a bit of get together and have a bit of a drink together, I thought was really a nice touch, actually. I think that and that's what the difference is, I think, with old Star Trek compared to new Trek, in that there is sometimes times to be able to have that, even though it's not necessarily going to push the story along too much. It's just a nice little moment that you can just sit in and have that mulled wine just for a couple of glasses and then move on with the story, which I think works really well.
Yeah, it works really well to take a beat, and this show, I think, being headed up by Tawny Newsome in the writers' room, has strong direction with Gaia Violo. It's working very well to kind of like, I hate to say it, but almost to reset how modern Star Trek has been proceeding with their season-long arcs.
Yeah, and I think that's why I was saying at the beginning why we get to this point. We've had this massive moment. We've had a little bit of a break last week.
Yeah.
And then we're really getting to something weighty this week, and then we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But you've got this Baracus stuff happening behind the scenes, because the Miracus is obviously setting up stuff because it says they've taken something from the starbase, and it was all a ruse to do that. And as I say, last week was an opportunity to kind of have a bit of an interesting debate, and I know you've talked about that last week, but then to really kind of set the stall back up again and kind of have this deep discussion and to try and sort of move the story forward a bit more, but also not in a way that you would normally do. And I don't think earlier Star Treks would have done that.
Fair.
I mean, I'll go back to family, but not necessarily within the same season where you're talking about an overall story. And also, you've got to think about the characters as well. They are, in theory, children who look about 35. But let's skim over that a little bit. Maybe 25, maybe 25.
There's talk about, and we'll get into it a little bit, but resilience. I kept coming back to that. Actually, I kept coming back to multiple sorts of themes in this episode, but resilience being one of them. And to your point, Kurt, about, here we are revisiting where these cadets are at this moment following the Miyazaki incident and setting up what's to come. This is about teaching these cadets resilience just as much as it is about processing their emotions. So let's talk a little bit about resilience here with Tarima. Tarima is no longer at the War College. She is now with Starfleet Academy. This decision was out of her hands entirely, and she is not happy at all about it. So much so that at one point in the episode, she gets plastered.
She does good drunk acting, actually. I'll give her that. Drunk acting is difficult to do. It's interesting with her character. What was really telling was the Doctor when he was saying, this is done for your own good.
Yeah.
We want to be careful about how things are moving forward. She's obviously a very powerful individual, so there's a little bit of I wouldn't necessarily say fear in that, but they do have, one, for her own well-being, but two, the war college is maybe putting her into a difficult position at that point. So it's interesting that they did that. There is obviously a narrative thing of putting her into the position where Caleb is, of course, but it does feel interesting that they don't necessarily touch on that too much about the potential of her, but it's just the way the doctor says it and the way that they're saying the counselling.
Yeah.
It's definitely leaning more towards her than anyone else, really, which is fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, which leads to her just feeling ostracized and sort of on the outs. Everyone's looking at her, staring at her, and this has a major impact on her mental well-being. Her lashing out at Caleb after inviting him, she's had a couple drinks, she's feeling emotional, and she's got every right to. I mean, to go through a situation where you do a little murder, yeah, you're saving some lives, but you're also committing some pretty harsh murders, and
which no doubt she would have probably felt as well when she was actually doing
exactly, because she would, as a Beta Z, she would feel that emotional impact. Yeah, and then to be ripped away from her friends at this point, from the people that were actually impacted and affected, to be brought back to Beta Z. She's got a new inhibitor in, and apparently it's way more effective. So I'm sure there has to be some residual side effects to these things, right?
Yeah, you would have thought so, definitely. There's also, with Tarina and the way that you're being ostracized, as I think is the word you use, which is right, that that might get overlooked, the fact that obviously the killings and stuff, it might be, well, you've suffered this trauma, we've had someone that's died, but she's the one that's physically murdered people. Well, not murdered, she's saved people in an act of war, effectively. That's what she's done. But that's going to have consequences for someone who is by nature of their species a empath.
Right.
So it does make sense in that regard. It's an interesting place to put her, and going to the drinking thing. And I know I was a little bit facetious with the acting, which, as I say, she does do a good job. It's probably and I hate to say this, I've seen it online where it says it's the 90210 aspect, but I absolutely do not mind it whatsoever. It's fine. They are young people. We've been in that position. I'm sure as younger versions of ourselves that we've maybe got into a position of something akin to that, whether it be similar or not. But there would have been moments that we've, decided, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. And it's an interesting, very, I would say, because obviously he's been in the news recently, the Dawson's Creek element as well. So I think that Star Trek's going down that route, and this episode is the perfect example. Just going back to the whole idea of this episode is the perfect example of, this is a very, very, very Star Trek episode, and it has elements of this drunk scene with those two and those two people working through it, and it fits in that really, really nicely. So I think they've done just a really nice nuanced approach on this particular part of it, because the thing has been thrown at it that it is a 90210, is this, it is that, and it's like, and this is Star Trek. So
we've had big, heavy, emotional conversations before in Star Trek plenty of times. It's gratifying to see, number one, that Caleb is of sound mind and body to send her away, decline her advances, which of course causes her to lash out. She's already feeling on the outs, and what a difficult situation to be in. He knows what he's doing. He also knows what he can't do. And this is just kind of the construct of where you are. So for me, it was super gratifying to see that these characters have the emotional maturity to make the correct decisions, and they also are still characters that are going through irrational, emotional situations.
Yeah, I think, just talking through that there, I think, and I'm sure we're about to come to this point, the genesis of it all is really fascinating to me. I think she's such an interesting character, and to have what would normally be considered a love triangle as such,
Mm.
and the way they've played it is really nice. I think they've done a really good job of that, because they could have easily have gone down the jealous woman, bouncing backwards and forwards. I know there's been elements, I know there's been bits of it, but there's a respect in the writing, I think, of this show, that it doesn't go down those tropes as such. It will touch upon them because they are, as I say, academy students, and testosterones and
It's
all that kind of
college.
thing, and
Yeah.
things going. College is going around. It's all of that kind of thing, but they could have taken an easy, lazy route.
Yep.
And gone, let's do a love triangle here. And I think, especially going post the drunk stage, when we get Genesis in the quarters with Tarina, that is just beautifully written.
It is.
Apart from the one thing I will say on that scene, it's like the bed. Like, is the bed just being designed so she could just be perfectly lined up with it?
Oh yeah, with the step and then the bed.
Yeah.
Oh, there's somewhere for you to sit and nicely comfort your friend. How convenient. I thought, I really like that scene. She comes in and she's speaking with Genesis. She finds comfort. She finds a friend in a moment where she feels like she doesn't have any friends. There's a line that Tarima says to Genesis, and let me get your take on this, Kurt, because at first I thought it was kind of rude, and then I thought, oh, well, maybe it is kind of a nice thing. But she refers to Genesis as, you're like a port in a storm, and I can never be that.
I wasn't sure how to take that phrase. I remember seeing that. I didn't really pick up on it on the first watch. On the second watch, I picked up on it. And I was like, so is it kind of saying that she's like the rock? Is she the solid rock in the middle, and, Tarima and others around her are the ones that are making the waves and stuff like that? Is that kind of what they're saying? Because I haven't really put too much thought into it, but it did stand out at me, and I was like, maybe I need to look at that, which I didn't go back to be fair. But it does feel like it's almost that. It's almost like the realization, because I think at the beginning of the scene as well, doesn't she? Because she goes, "You remind me of a friend," but that was right after she was like accusing Caleb of this thing. So it's like it's a weird interplay a little bit.
Yeah, and the dialogue is interesting because when she comes into quarters after accusing Caleb of, wanting to be with Genesis, then she goes to Genesis, finds comfort in a friend, right? And it almost seemed to me as if she was going to tell Genesis, hey, I know Caleb is all about you, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And then at the last second, she says, you remind me of a friend. But then she tells us the story of a friend who gets stuck in some kind of a tube and she's never the same again. What the heck what story is that?
It's a bit weird.
And then to refer to Genesis as like, you're a port in a storm. Is she referring to Caleb going to Genesis because Genesis is there and it's convenient, and then once things are better with Tamira, he'll come back to Tamira? I was like, that's kind of a weird take.
Yeah, I think I'm going to struggle with that for a while.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'm not. I still can't. I can't quite fathom out what they were. It's not jumping out at me as something that I can cling on to. I just didn't quite understand the phrasing or the words of it.
Right. I guess I will reserve judgment till we see more of interplay between Tarima and Genesis, especially if this subject comes up again with Caleb and this potential not a love triangle situation that they currently have. But it's interplay, it's dynamic, and Tarima feels threatened. She's at this college all alone. Yeah, she's got her brother, but she's always had her brother. This is a different dynamic.
Yeah, definitely.
Kurt, how do you like Sam as a character?
Sam is one of those characters where you can instantly take a dislike into because she's just so exuberant and so eager to please and stuff. She's got that naivety. She's got, very kind of what would be the best word to say? Like sort of, she could come across as really annoying.
Sure, yeah.
That being
Obnoxious, a
said,
little pretentious,
that
maybe. Sure, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That being
That being
said,
said,
I haven't actually. I love her. So like it could come across as that, and it's almost like I forgive her. And um, this episode, absolutely, irrespective of what I may have thought or may have like gone, oh, she's a little bit like sort of too eager and whatever, completely turns that around. And uh, I like the Data Doctor Spockness of her. I think that she's a typical Star Trek character. I love the idea of the being the phonetic life form, and obviously the stuff that's happened where she's been the emissary, stuff like that, which I found was fascinating in that the way that they played that with Cisco, and that she was what needing to find out. She was curious, and I think as a character like that, um, I think they've done the right thing by having those curiosities, having that enthusiasm, having that annoyingness, having that exuberance, having all of this like fluffy stuff, and bringing it into this episode makes so much sense. And I've recently done a little bit of a rewatch of the episodes, coming up after finishing it a couple of weeks, last week, and I went through certain stages, and you can see, and I will say on rewatch, when people do rewatch this, there is definite moments throughout the show where certain characters have character beats that play off in later episodes, and even like to now with Caleb, there's a couple of bits in this, and Sam is this one in this particular episode is the case in point. And I think by rewatching it, you do get that. I think Sam is the perfect example of that up until this point.
yeah, really, really, really well said. I love Sam. I know all of us on this podcast are really enjoying Carice Brooks in her role as Ceres Acclamation Mill. It's just like joyful and optimistic. And Tilly says, I think it's Chet Reno who mentions something about Sam and how optimistic she is all the time, and how much joy she brings everywhere she goes. And how can you be so optimistic? And Tilly has a line where she's like, "Oh yeah, optimism is me paddling my canoe," which is a great turn of phrase.
Yeah, yeah. The thing about Sam as well, I think, like I said at the beginning when I was talking about the episodes in general,
Sure.
that they are, for me, a little bit compressed in that, this is by far the most outstanding one of the season. The first episode was, like I said at the beginning, is really well done, and it's I wouldn't necessarily say it's the best pilot of a Star Trek show. I think Discovery's was brilliant, for example, but at the same time, I think it was really accomplished. With Sam, what's interesting with her is like she's the opposite. She's so not necessarily out there, but so as a character, she's defined quite by her characteristics rather than as a character. And what makes the drop so much more effective is the fact that you're used to this exuberant person. We've seen it in the Miyazaki episode, actually, when she does kind of filter out at that
Yep.
point, that you're seeing her kind of go from this like not hurting a fly kind of characteristic to actually the trauma that she's having to deal with, and the issues that she's dealing with now. And I think that drop is really effective from a drama perspective.
Yeah, yeah. All these characters, this entire episode, they are dealing with the trauma from the Miyazaki incident, and Sam is no different. She's glitching out consistently. Some theories I saw were like, the weapon that the Furies used, had some kind of an impact, and that would come up later. Instead, we come to find out that her processors are overloading, and she's just going through this sort of systematic reset glitch loop. And this is a nonstop situation. The doctor can't fix it. The Hollow engineers can't fix it. And neither can visits to the Hollow Spa. So we wind up having to go to Cask, which I really enjoyed. We get an away mission.
We do. I think, talking about like Sam in that perspective as well, where she's she's glitching out. There was a bit of theory about what she was doing. Obviously, I haven't seen the boards at that point, so I was just watching this as we go through it. And it was interesting that there's been those queries and questions about whether or not what was happening, and her eventual reasoning for it. But what I think, I'm sure, obviously we'll get into more depth of this, but going back to like her character trait of being this exuberant person, but she's also like got such humility.
Yeah.
That, the fact that she read all that stuff, that kind of, as I say, the dataism of reading all the Klingon plays and Klingon operas, and all the plays in the English language and whatever, and the fact that she spotted this play and she spotted that Terima should be the Emily character. It's stuff like that which adds to her humility, adds to her understanding, despite her not understanding.
Yeah.
It's that data thing where she's like, she knew what she needed to do to make things move in that storyline, despite the things that are happening to her. She understood what was happening to her, but she still wanted to have an impact on the rest of the academy students. I thought that was greatly written.
Yeah, the leaving behind of the toothbrush for Genesis, I thought, was also just something so unique that, of course, only a photonic would do something like that. They would find the beauty and the grace in a toothbrush of all things, and
which goes back to the point, doesn't it? She read all of those plays, and like Genesis says, like, you've got that, and you've got a toothbrush. It's like
holding both things. There's a scene in the shuttle when Aki, the doctor, and Sam are en route to Kask, which, by the way, real quick, the fact that Aki and the doctor both agree to escort Sam to Kask, a non-Federation world, just shows the dedication that Captain Aki has as Chancellor of Starfleet Academy. This is an opportunity for a new first contact situation with these photonics. And of course, a Federation escort has to accompany Sam. So why not go? This was beautiful Star Trek writing.
Yeah, I think as well, there was always going to be a bit of an interesting take, wasn't it, on what they were going to do. I think the Athena, what a ship that is, by the way. I just love the fact that obviously they're able to use the screens and stuff like that, that you can have the Athena on Earth in San Francisco with the skyline that you can see. We've seen it with the Cisco one. You see it pretty much any time that they're actually on Earth, which is wonderful. And then you can then have it do what it needs to do. And it's so Voyager of them. I think this is the thing that maybe not necessarily people miss, but like, things move on. Voyager was the first ship that we had that could land on a planet, effectively. If you take out to 09.
Sure.
But the fact that the moving on from, like, say, having a Voyager land on the ship to actually having the quarters at the Academy being the ship is great. And I love the fact that they've used that to do the Miyazaki Incident, that they're able to do these away missions. This one's obviously slightly different in that they're actually going on a space shuttle, but at the same time, they're able to find reasons and good narrative reasons to actually do it. Whereas, and it's not the world-ending elements that we've seen in, like, the Discovery and stuff like that. So I do like that, and it makes sense that, again, going back to what we were saying about Reno and Tilly, that Aki has this affinity for the students, that that's what she's there for, that she does care for all of them in various different aspects, and she's able to go, do you know what, I'm gonna take this on board, and actually one of our students is in peril here, we need to look after her. And obviously to take the Doctor and Aki makes total sense in that regard, where previous Star Treks, you'd have to maybe find a way why would the captain be going. But it makes sense from this perspective.
Definitely. And the Doctor, of course, reveals a little bit of his reticence to Sam. He's very, very blatant about not wanting to have a relationship with her. And I don't know, Kurt, for me, did you feel, before we get to the reason why, do you feel that this was like a little bit of a character assassination?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying before about like when you rewatch it, because I know the show they show it in this episode, don't they? They actually show the moment when they met, and at that time I thought, oh, that's a little bit. I wasn't expecting the Doctor to be a bit like that. That was a bit strange. So yeah, it just felt like a bit out of character. And I know we'll get to it, but it's just while it's in my head. I was watching this with my partner, and she literally was like, "Whoa, hold her hand!" Like literally was like screaming that she had to hold her hand, and I'm going, "Oh my God, what is he doing?" And at that point, things were starting to go into my head, going, "No, there's something. They're doing something here." That it started to click a little bit, going, "They're doing something here now. This makes sense now," but I don't know what it is. So it did feel really, really fascinating, and especially with like in the space shuttle when he's listening to the opera, and we've seen him sing early in the season. You know, we've seen all the Doctor traits that we've had in the past, and for him to be that cold, yes, okay, you know, in Voyager when he first was booted up, and you know, he learned all those subroutines and stuff, but it felt like after 900 years, why is he doing that? And yeah, it felt off, but it makes total sense when obviously when we get to the reason why.
Yeah, definitely. And we get to Cask. The whole reason we're there, Sam is glitching out. We meet the Makers again. And the Makers, I think, are portrayed a little differently in this episode than we had gotten them in Sam's perspective from the Emissary episode, where she basically felt as though the Makers were very oppressive. You know, they were coming across as teenage parents, right? Like just, you know, get good grades, enroll in this class, get A+, and then come home and tell us everything you learned, right? Whereas in this episode, I felt the Makers were portrayed as being rather benevolent, rather open to meeting with the Federation delegates and open to hearing everything that had happened. What was your take on the Makers in this?
Yeah, like earlier on, they were quite isolationist, aren't they? I mean, they're kind of playing that role to a point. And it was almost like, because they're delivering somebody back, it was almost like a mutual consent. I felt I got Q elements with, obviously, you know, this is how to make you understand we don't want you to see Cask. So they still have that protectionism over themselves.
They do.
By using like sort of the Doctor's memories to create the space, and they've got to use that space because it's quite an expensive set. So to be fair, but yeah, to reuse that set was interesting, because that definitely had Q vibes in like, let's do something that you will understand, or let's put something in there that you'll understand or are comfortable with. Yeah, the Emissary episode was definitely a little bit more like you say, it was definitely harder, and I suppose they're looking because it is after their own, and it's the Doctor as well. I think that maybe that had a bit of an inkling to it, because the Doctor's pretty much been mythologized a little, has kind of got a mythology around him a little bit as well. So I think they would be naturally intrigued by that. So I think that was the opening,
definitely,
in that way.
Yeah, it made good sense to me that by scanning the Doctor and his memories, and of course utilizing Sam's memories to kind of piece together everything, they were open to this discussion. They were open to hearing everything. So I hope we definitely get more Caskian knowledge and lore built in. It would be really exciting to see what their world might look like, you know, even, you know, yes, okay, maybe they have a portrayal of the physical realm that they exist in, but nevertheless, that's the stuff that I feel like a lot of Star Trek fans are really looking for, and to pepper that in is really exciting.
Yeah, was it the same actor, the British actor that was I didn't notice it was it the same guy as in Emissary or not? Because he was obviously a well-known actor, but I didn't quite catch him.
Craig says his name perfectly, but
it said it's Etam
yeah,
isn't it?
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Yeah.
Yeah. Craig says his name perfectly. I always butcher it. So,
yeah, same here. I'm used. I mean, I'm the king of the malaprop. which is probably the wrong word I'm probably using there. I always get malaprop and melonprop or whatever prop it is.
I love it. Kurt, Sam frickin' dies in this episode, man. Left field, left turn, was not expecting that. You know, exit stage left, please. It was big surprise. Did I see it coming? No, not like that. I kind of expected some sort of like, almost like with Data, where, you know, shut down, reboot, and now she's a copy that reverted to whatever the last backup was. That's kind of where I thought they were going to go with it, and not entirely wrong, I guess. But yeah, she dies. Kurt, what gives?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I was. It's not often that this happens in shows for me, but when she died, they went to a different scene, and I'm like, "Whew, okay, that's an interesting choice," because it was like, no, they can't. It was one of those ones where I was literally going, "No, they can't kill her off. They can't. Like, surely
because
they
they
can't
cut
kill
to
her off.
cadets, basically almost
Yeah.
memorializing her. Oh man,
Yeah. And so it goes back to that again, going back to that length thing of why maybe this episode does feel long, because, you know, I mean, you've got the complete opposite with Stranger Things, haven't you?
Yeah.
if it's like, yeah, let's have someone potentially fall off a tower and then go back to the scene immediately afterwards. So that was a complete opposite. But yeah, I think by doing that, it was a little bit, it was hard hitting. It was like, oh, okay, what or how are they going to get out of this? Are they going to leave it? Are they going to like use it as a potential for moving on? What is? It was difficult, and yeah, it was very brave of them. I mean, in sci-fi tropes, I was thinking phonetics can, well, you know, how do you kill a being like that as well? So I was like, well, I'm not too sure, but there was enough wheel turning in my head to go, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do here, which is great for a show.
Yeah. Everything that came out of it certainly came as a welcome. Like, this is excellent. The emotional beats I felt were all authentic to the situation that was occurring on screen, and it felt real. It felt, you know, we had invested so much time with this character, getting to know her, her journey, her excitement. You know, getting, you know, drunk for the first time. You know, dancing. Amazing. You know, we experience all this time, and then boom, her processors are overloading. The makers utilizing a technique called the swarm to basically integrate themselves into her processor to understand what happened, you know, how did this occur? And that's when we get a lot of those flashback sequences to the doctor basically being a dick to her. And this is where, you know, ultimately we are told by the makers that Sam cannot be resurrected. You know, she does not have, you know, there is no earlier copy. You know, it took them 2 centuries to make Sam, and it took Starfleet something like 208 days to kill her. So they're not too happy with this outcome.
No, and I think there's a couple of things in there. I know I mentioned it before, but I think is really important in this episode, which is put such an emotional hit on it, is the when she literally asks for the hand of the doctor.
That is massive.
Then, yeah, and then to double down by saying, you know, you've killed somebody within 209 days, it's kind of like, oh, okay, that's hard hitting in itself. And then to hit you with the amount of times that the doctor at the beginning is like, you know, I'm not mentoring you, I'm not doing this, I'm very kind of thing. You know, in some ways, I would sometimes have a little bit of criticism on like, oh, flashback's going to show in this, but I think this one does it in that kind of, and it's nowhere near like this, but it's that kind of style in the Sixth Sense style where it's like,
yeah,
right, okay, I'm understanding now. There's something a little bit more here. So I think that it needed it. Whereas in other TV shows that I've seen where they maybe do a flashback and it's like, well, you're just retelling the story we already know. But I think because there were micro moments that you needed it, because there's not any much weight to it. It's one of those things where you might just go, oh, that was a good read from the doctor, and don't think anything of it. So, but as I say, the 209 days, and then as you say, for them to swarm in, and then for him to watch it die was, you know, all of that scene was like, oh, this is cold. And also then on top of that, which we haven't mentioned, the black and whiteness
yes.
of it, you know, so both using the our town kind of
Yes.
idea of just being a really cold set and, you know, just having minimal stuff, also kind of in the back of your head subconsciously somewhere thinking back to some of the black and white scenes in Voyager with the whole holodeck episodes that may be calling you back to nostalgia
Yep.
a little bit, which then filters in as part of the emotional resonance for this. I think worked absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Doctor's reason. His unwillingness to engage with cadets beyond his role of just being the Doctor at Starfleet Academy. So my first question for you, Kurt, is if the Doctor did not wish to seek out any sort of mentor-mentee relationship with a young cadet, why would he agree to go work at Starfleet Academy?
My answer would be, being put on the spot, is that cadets aren't the problem. It's the species that he's got in Sam that's the problem. It's too close to home. So I think the cadet element, I think he's quite potentially at home with. I'd have to rewatch it to think about whether or not how he reacts to other cadets, because I can't think of anything right now. It makes sense that he would mentor or be around people, but when you're talking about someone who's digging into a traumatic memory, which this episode is all about with all the kids, it's not only the kids that we're looking at the Doctor, then that's where I think the juxtaposition is. I think he sees mentoring or teaching cadets. I mean, he's a little bit. I suppose he's a little bit cold to other characters as well, because the one that eats the comm badges, and even like sort of when Caleb's coming, he's a bit cold to them as well, isn't he? It's a bit long in the tooth in some ways, and maybe the doubling down on that he's there, but he's all there as part of, like, he's just being and existing rather than actually living.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
I know I put you on the spot, but I do think you nailed it right on the head there, which is the fact that Sam is a photonic, and he has been around organics since he came online. So he is used to the idea of watching his friends die. And yes, that saddens him, but he has his own emotional processors. But yes, I think Sam being a photonic is really the crux of the issue here. Now, okay, so his daughter, Belle, the reason he does not want to have this sort of relationship with Sam is because she reminds him of his daughter, Belle, from the episode Star Trek Voyager Real Life, where he basically programs a holodeck program for himself where he has a family, and he raises that family, he interacts with that family. And the story in that episode is B'Elanna stumbles into it, and she says, "This is not how real families are. There are traumas. There are terrible things that happen. You've been living a picture-perfect life, but life is not picture-perfect." So she goes in and reprograms his holodeck creation and creates these certain issues wherein his daughter Belle winds up tragically passing. And that episode is I think probably in Voyager's, if it's not top 10, it's definitely top 20.
Yeah, it was one of those episodes where when I was watching this episode, I looked and went, I'm struggling to remember this one. But I went back, and I haven't watched the episode itself. I just went back and had a quick Google on it, and then I watched the end scene on YouTube. I thought I'd just quickly have a look at that end scene, just see if it jogs any memories. And it did. It jogged some memories. And it was things like the Klingon kids that were coming around for the son, and, there was a bit of like a kind of racial thing in that. And in that episode, if memory serves me right, you might have more of a memory than I have, or I've seen it more recently than I have. But there was an element of, like, when B'Elanna reprograms, he then sort of sets the compromise, but a lot of compromises were for him, not for them. And I think there was a little bit of like learning from that perspective as well. And so there was that element. And doesn't he doesn't he refuse to go in, or he turns the program off for a while, and then it's Tom Paris that like forces him
Yep.
back, doesn't
Yep.
he? So so there's that bullheadedness in the Doctor that we've had in the past in that regard as well. Because it's a head injury, I think, isn't it? I thought it was a disease or something, but it doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's a head
Yeah.
injury that she has.
She winds up basically
So
being injured. Yeah.
yeah. So, and then when I saw that, obviously the flashes on the screen, it had that emotional resonance. It was one of those things in some ways, I wish I'd remembered the episode more when the flash on the screen to go, oh my God, it didn't quite do that for me. But at the same time, there was this naggingness in the back of my head going, I kind of half remember this episode. But yeah, it's a great pullback from a nostalgic like drop back from a previous episode and carrying the story on. I think that like a lot of people accuse Star Trek of doing that too much, but I think from an emotional resonance perspective, I think it worked.
Yeah, I think it's also a good sort of highway, if you will, to get viewers to be like, oh, wait a second, what about the Doctor? Which episode was this? I kind of almost wish, they had like VH1 pop-up videos. Hey, if you want to learn more about this episode.
Yeah. This is on a completely random note. I don't know if this will go in or not. I've been watching season 4 of Evil, and they've been doing on the title credits, if you skip these title credits, you will be haunted.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So you kind of have
That's
to do
funny.
that. But that bridge, you asked me a question before about how is this an entry point for Star Trek? That's the perfect example, isn't it? For people to go, because I know I would be curious if I didn't watch the show and go, all right, no, I think I want to watch that episode and find out what actually happened in that one. So for more, for more, read here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So so I think it does work, and the highway is probably the best way of describing it, because it made me want to think, not necessarily go back and watch the episode, but go and actually I need a bit of a recap of what happened there. I kind of half remember it, but yeah, it was good to do that.
Yeah, and the solve here that brings us to kind of the resolution of the episode is that Sam needed to have a childhood programmed. Captain Aki nails it. She says, we teach emotional resilience in childhood. And Sam had never been programmed to have any sort of childhood. So what happens? The Doctor agrees ultimately after some convincing to basically Sam will be rebuilt from the ground up. The Doctor will be there to parent her, give her the childhood, and 17 years passes in roughly 2 weeks thanks to the time dilation surrounding Cask. So within 2 weeks, Sam is back at Starfleet Academy, and now she has a childhood. But most importantly, Kurt, and I think this is going to come into a big play, she's going to have 2 sets of memories. First set of memories is of her awaking and being at Starfleet Academy, those 209 days of what she experienced. And now she's going to have a whole new set of memories of an entire childhood with the Doctor. And now the Doctor is back at Starfleet Academy, and ipso facto, he's got a daughter.
What I found, irrespective of obviously what might happen in relation to that, because it obviously is a narrative point. I actually missed it the first time around when they said about her having the 209 days memory as well as the 17 years. I kind of missed that, or I just assumed it would just be naturally integrated. But as I say, it might be a narrative point there. But what was fascinating to me is going back to Our Town, is that the character of Emily gets to choose when she goes back in time as the ghost. So she, I think there's like the mother talks to her and thinks she wants to go back to a roundabout where the wedding happened and that moment at all. And she decides to go to her 12th birthday. And it's interesting that, in that story, she goes back to the 12th birthday and then has the epiphany of, it's the little moments that actually make a big deal. It's not necessarily about, the child or the wedding or the big events that happen in your life. It's the things that you get along the way. And that in itself, I think, is really fascinating from her as a perspective, because, you got to look at Tarima, who is being the ghost but isn't the ghost because she's still there. That, you know, Sam is the ghost but is actually coming back as the ghost, and as actually comes back as well. So
it's so layered. It's so
yeah.
so many layers.
Yeah, so I just love the fact that, you know, there's that interplay, and obviously the time dilation, in the fact that they can choose that. You know, it's a little bit, you know, they have this thing in the history, don't they, where like A Wonderful Life is a similar kind of premise. You know, going back, the Charles Dickensness of it all. You know, with the future ghosts, past and present and future, all of that literally stuff, and obviously Our Town being another one that where, like I say, with the 12-year-old, the ghost analogy, and the fact that we get to relive that. And like I said, with the Doctor as well, with that omnipresent stage manager aspect of it, it just links in so well with the sci-fi trope of it. And it's different, but it's similar. And I just like that interplay that they've managed to connect those two stories together. And, you know, the cadets, Sam, Tarima, all of them realizing it's about living the moment now and looking to the stars, like we get at the end of the episode. So it's such an interesting parable in that way. And talking about going to sort of a highway to a Star Trek Voyager episode, my hope would be in this that people would actually go and search out Our Town in whatever form they want to search it out in, because I think it's definitely worth a watch. Yeah,
definitely. Going back to the play a little bit, the episode starts its closeout with Akam, Tarima's brother. He stands up. You know, they're sitting around. They're all sad. They're beaten down, and they're just kind of reflecting. And he stands up and he starts doing the play, which I thought was a brilliant way to kind of segue, you know, a lot of the emotional moments that were happening over on Cask. They're going through the play as we watch Sam grow up, if you will. And it comes around to Tarima entering into the play and taking over the role of Emily, which I thought was a really great way to kind of juxtapose how she entered the episode, where she did not want to be there at all. And now here she is accepting her place and joining in part of it.
Yeah. It's just wonderful. Just like I say, with why I think this is such a great Star Trek episode, because using something like this is not something that you would get normally in a lot of shows. And you know, whether it's with Star Trek, whether it's like sort of looking at isolationism, racism, you know, anything that they tend to look at, I think stuff like this gets missed because people just naturally assume, oh, look at this, look at what they're doing here, look at what they're doing there. And it's like, well, yeah, but there's some deep, really like interesting discussions, and Academy is such an interesting way to like sort of filter that through. And using Our Town, and not only that, like I say with Picard in Next Generation or various other episodes, they might touch upon it, or they might like reference it, or they might use a few bits, but to have such a deep analysis of a particular piece of work is not usual, and very, very, I'd say very Star Trek.
Yes, and the framing from the cinematic direction to tie it all together, to go black and white, and then to see the makers as being the pop of color in those scenes, just like that's masterful.
It's memorable. It's something that you'll go back to. I definitely think this is an episode I'll come back to. You know, I said at the top of the hour, like, and the one thing that frustrates me with kind of the vibe of New Trek is obviously the social media stuff. Like, I'm not like a huge New Trek fan, but there's so much wealth, there's so many things that are great about the New Trek, and I think a lot of people miss that. You know, because they're so interested in their own opinion or their own or the consensus of other people, and just accepting it for what it is and actually looking into it, and rather than just going bang and making assumptions. You know, something like this will probably get missed on by a lot of people, and I think it's a disservice to it. And I'm hoping that people will see this and actually cotton onto that and go, right, okay, there is something else to this. And I think there will be people like that, which is great.
No, definitely. I've there's been a few people that I've talked to over the course of the show airing that were kind of hesitant to get into it, and to put it frankly, I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm turning 40 this year, so to watch these kids essentially go through this time of their life, I can relate to it because I remember being that age. It wasn't that long ago, I suppose. But at the same time, there are adults in this story too, and that I can relate to. I can relate to the mentor-mentee relationships. I can relate to, still trying to find yourself professionally, not just, where am I going in my life, but where am I now and where does that direction lead? And I found myself surprised by how much I've enjoyed watching these characters, I call them kids, but really they're all in their early 20s. If we assume that, it's a college, although Sam is 17, she's there on early admission.
Yeah, she's very intelligent, 17-year-old.
Oh, yes.
She reads quite heavily.
Quite so. I've been loving everything Starfleet Academy has been throwing at me. And, yes, this episode was dense. I thought the slower pacing was a welcome change. It helped us to kind of really digest everything. But yeah, Kurt, was there any major takeaways from this episode for you? What sort of things really got your attention?
Again, I do like, as much as it sounds really kind of dark of me, but I do like the dealing with these kind of issues and dealing with trauma and things. So it's done in a really interesting way here. Like if you go back to something like Memento Mori, then that's a very different take on that, with Lan. But or the war episode as well, for example. But I thought it was really interesting, and also going back to what you're saying about like looking back at this and looking at the mentor-mentee relationship, and especially something I've been going through of late is kind of like getting to know myself and quite a bit in some of the studies that I've been doing of late, and how I react to stuff, but also how I can like support other people and be that coach for other people. And seeing it through that lens is certainly interesting in my eyes as well, because using the tools, psychometric data and all that kind of thing that I've been learning to do with and stuff is fascinating. I think they kind of get it right with Tilly, so I think that in itself is good, because that's very difficult to do. What if obviously in Tilly's world, to be able to actually have that assertiveness, to be able to like pull those strings. So I thought that was really good. And like I say, the duality, I think, is the best way of putting it, of our town and the episode, and also the emotional like stabbing of the Doctor, and how cold he was, and his turnaround and his acceptance with that time dilation, which is a very sci-fi trope. But also I think the 12-year-old thing was definitely something that jumped out at me with Emily. I think I would have liked to have maybe grasped on a little bit more the Terima and Ghost thing. I think for me I wouldn't say it's the weakest part of it. I wasn't finding myself attached to that as much as I possibly could have.
Sure.
But again, goes back to your point. I'm sick. I've got 6 years on you. I'm 46 now. I did latch onto the Doctor, and I will say, I think it's one of Picardo's best performances to date, without a doubt. I think he knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
And obviously, I would lean naturally to a legacy character anyway. So I think that worked really well.
Yeah, that was really powerful stuff. Just one final note from me. I took a note of it, but I am almost certain that this is the first time that we have ever gotten any sort of exposition on what Klingon opera actually is in Star Trek.
Right, okay.
So I thought that was pretty exciting. Passion, drama, and lots of murder.
Yeah. What was the situation with his code though?
I don't know. They seem to just drop that halfway through the episode. Like he's sneezing all over everything, and then he's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just a little Klingon bug.
He had an episode last week, didn't he?
Yeah. Kurt, hey, listen, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a while since I think last time we were talking Discovery a few years back. So it's really great to have you on for Starfleet Academy. Are you working on anything anywhere that folks might be able to hear more from you?
I am. I'm doing currently in the midst of doing a Lost rewatch podcast, and that's called The Magic Box. And at time of recording, we're getting to the end of season 2. So we've just come back, or we're just about to come back this weekend at time of recording. So, literally now for anyone who may have watched Lost, we have entered into the foray of a character called Henry Gale, who's really important to the show. So yes, I'm doing that at the moment. So you can find that at the Magic Box, which is Linktree, linktr.ee/the Magic Box. That's pretty much all I'm doing right at this moment. We are scouring the internet daily, or I am daily, for any news on the X-Files reboots. So closed the Xcast, the X-Files podcast that we have that I show ran with a few people, and that was at the end of the year last year, and we are just waiting for any news for any Ryan Coogler reboot, which is getting exciting, to say the least. There's rumours of casting starting to happen as we speak today.
Wow.
So we'll see where that goes, but no official announcement yet.
No official.
So yes, the Magic Box is where it's at right this moment. So Lost is keeping me going through, which is celebrating its 20-year anniversary.
Wow.
So we're in season 2 on its 20th.
How about it? Nice. Kurt, thanks to you again for joining. Folks, thanks for listening, tuning in to our coverage of Starfleet Academy. Please check us out on Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram at StarfleetPod. You can listen to previous episodes of the podcast covering other Star Trek shows like Discovery, Lower Decks, and yes, even our review of the Section 31 movie event. On our website at www.wearestarfleetpod.com. A big thank you to all our listeners, and remember to make your beds and make it to class on time. Cheers, all.